Now we're going to take some questions. The first question is from Courtney of the Los Angeles Times.
Your top economic priority has been to build up U.S. domestic manufacturing in competition with China. But your rules against expanding chip manufacturing in China is hurting South Korean companies that rely heavily on Beijing. Are you damaging a key ally in the competition with China to help your domestic politics ahead of the election? And one for President Yoon. There have been concerns since last year that North Korea will soon be conducting its 7th nuclear test amid growing domestic support in your country for your own nuclear weapons. Meanwhile, Russia has suggested it could send its latest weapons to North Korea if South Korea sends lethal aid to Ukraine. How do you seek to manage the North Korea risk amid obligations to Ukraine and NATO? Thank you.
Let me respond to your question first. My desire to increase U.S. manufacturing and jobs in America is not about China. I'm not concerned about China. Remember, America invented the semiconductor. We invented it. We used to have 40% of the market. And we decided that what we're going to do over the past, I don't know how many decades, we decided that it was going to be cheaper to export jobs and import product. And along came the pandemic. And the pandemic taught us that we used to have, as I said, 40% of the market just some years ago. Now it's down to 10%. And again, we invented the supercomputer. So I decided to go out and see what we could do to increase our hold on the market once again. And so what I did was I went around the country, as well as in addition to passing the CHIPS and Science Act, I, in fact, visited countries around the world. And two significant South Korean companies decided they were going to invest billions of dollars in chip manufacturing in the United States. It wasn't designed to hurt China. It was designed so we didn't have to worry about whether or not we had access to semiconductors. For example, during the pandemic, what happened was all of a sudden everybody started to learn the phrase supply chain. A year ago, no one knew what the hell everybody was talking about when he said supply chain. But now they all know. And we lost access to these semiconductors, in which new automobiles in the United States need 30,000 of them just to build a new automobile. And we didn't have them. So we started to invest here. And what happened was when we encouraged the investment through the CHIPS and Science Act, and now we have enormous investment in the United States, well over $200 billion in long-term investment in semiconductors. And we're rebuilding the economy of the United States with those semiconductors. It's not designed to hurt China. The only thing I did say with regard to China, there are certain extremely sophisticated semiconductors that we have built that are useful for nuclear and or other weapon systems. Those we are not selling. We're not exporting to China or anyone else. And so that's the context in which this has all occurred. In the meantime, we've created thousands of jobs and bringing back a sense of pride and dignity to so many towns in the country where all of a sudden, over the last 3 decades, we found out that factory that had 600 people shut down. The soul of that community was lost. And so I made sure when the semiconductors were coming back that they were not just going to go to the coast, they'd be all over the country. And so we have a significant field of dreams outside of in Ohio, outside of Columbus. We're in Texas, we're in Arizona, anyway, they're all over the country. So it's not viewed to hurt anyone else. We are providing access to those semiconductors. We're a supply chain you can count on. But we are not going to sit back and be in a position where we don't have access to those semiconductors. We are not going to be a place where we're the end of that line. We're the beginning of it. And it's generating significant economic growth in America and not hurting anybody. And by the way, it's creating jobs in South Korea. It's creating jobs in South Korea, not just with SK, but anyway, with Samsung and other industries. So I think it's a win-win.
질문에 대해서 답변을 드리겠습니다. 한미 양국의 이번에 워싱턴 선언에서 구체화되어 있는 확장억제의 강화와 그 실행 방안은 과거와는 다른 것입니다. 먼저 이를 논의하고 실행하는 NCG라고 하는 핵협의 그룹을 출범을 시키고 실시간 정례적으로 정기적으로 논의를 하면서 양국의 핵 자산에 관한 정보의 공유, 또 여러 가지 상황에 대한 정보 공유, 그리고 그 대응 방안에 관한 공동 기획과 또 관련된 훈련과 연습에 관한 이런 공동의 이 실행, 이런 것들을 조금 더 강화하고 구체화해서 우리 한반도에 맞는 북핵에 제대로 대응할 수 있는 그런 맞춤형 확장 억제 협력 방안이 강구됐고, 이런 것을 추진해 나가는 과정에서 북핵에 대한 그러한 국민들의 우려는 많이 해소될 것으로 보고 있고, 그리고 어떠한 그 핵을 쓰는 상황에서 한미 양국의 강력한 핵 전력을 포함한 모든 압도적인 대응으로 신속하게 대응을 해 나가기로 했습니다.
답변 지금 주셨지만 확장억제 관련해서 이번에 한미 핵협의그룹이 좀 구성이 됐을 때 한국이 좀 구체적으로 어떻게 여기 작동하는지에 대해서 좀 여쭤보고 싶습니다. 이를테면 핵무기 탑재가 가능한 미 전략자산 운용에 한국이 좀 어떤 식으로 관여하게 되는지 이런 부분 설명 가능하시면 좀 부탁드리고요. 관련해서 바이든 대통령께 여쭤보고 싶은 것은 오늘 발표 보면 한국은 이제 NPT 체제를 유지하면서 확장억제를 강화하는 방식을 채택을 했는데요. 대통령께서 보시기에 이 정도면 북핵 위협에 대해서 한국 국민들이 느끼기에 좀 안심할 만한 수준이라고 판단하시는지 여쭤보고 싶습니다.
핵 협의 그 그룹의 활동에 대해서는 함께 정보를 공유하고 같이 일을 한다는 것입니다. 구체적으로 무슨 정보를 어떻게 공유하고 일을 어떻게 하는지는 이 자리에서 말씀드릴 수 없습니다만은 종전에 그 핵 우산에서 기초한 그런 확장 억제하고는 좀 다르고, 이거는 좀 다른 것이 아니라 많이 다릅니다. 이거는 미국이 그 핵 자산에 관한 정보와 이 기획 또 거기에 대한 대응 실행을 누구와 함께 공유하고 의논한 적이 없기 때문에 이거는 하나의 새로운 확장 억제 방안이고, 그렇기 때문에 더욱 강력하다고 자신할 수 있습니다.
The response that I would give you is that the extended deterrence means that we are having more consultation with whatever action is to be contemplated or taken. And we made it really very, very clear. The ROK has repeatedly confirmed its commitment to the Non-Proliferation Treaty. And the Washington Declaration is a prudent step to reinforce extended deterrence and respond to advancing DPRK nuclear threat. Look, a nuclear attack by North Korea against the United States or its allies or partisans or partners is unacceptable and will result in the end of whatever regime were to take such an action. And it's about strengthening deterrence in response to DPRK's escalatory behavior and to deal in complete consultation. And, the idea that I have absolute authority as Commander-in-Chief and the sole authority to use a nuclear weapon, but, what the declaration means is that we're going to make every effort to consult with our allies when it's appropriate, if any action is so called for. Certainly, we talked about this and some other things today, but the bottom line here is there's even closer cooperation, closer consultation, and we're not going to be stationing nuclear weapons on the peninsula, but we will have ports visits of nuclear submarines and things like that. We are not walking away from that. My turn to ask a question. I think the next question is Mary Bruce, ABC.
Thank you, Mr. President. You recently launched your re-election campaign. You've said questions about your age are legitimate, and your response is always, just watch me. But the country is watching, and recent polling shows that 70% of Americans, including a majority of Democrats, believe you shouldn't run again. What do you say to them? What do you say to those Americans who are watching and aren't convinced? You've said you can beat Trump again. Do you think you're the only one?
I may not be the only one, but I know him well, and I know the danger he presents to our democracy, and we've been down this road before. And with regard to age, you know, and polling data, I noticed the polling data I keep hearing about is that I'm between 42 and 46% favorable rating, et cetera. And but everybody running for re-election in this time has been in the same position. There's nothing new about that. They're making it sound like Biden's really underwater. Number one. Number two, when the same polling data asks whether they think what kind of job I've done, it gets overwhelmingly positive results. From 58% thinking everything from the CHIPS Act and all the things we've done. You know, we've created, like I said, we've created 12 million new jobs. We've created 800,000 manufacturing jobs. We have economic growth moving. We're in a situation where the climate, we've invested more money and more help in dealing with the climate crisis than any nation in the world. And so things are moving. And the reason I'm running again is there's a job to finish. The other thing is that, look, you know, think about what I inherited when I got elected. I inherited a nation in overwhelming debt at the time, number one, in the hole for the 4 years that he was president. I inherited a nation that had a serious loss of credibility around the world as America first. And, you know, the first meeting I attended the G7, I said, America's back. And one of the world leaders looked and said, for how long? For how long? There's a great concern about the United States being able to lead the free world. And we're doing that again. And those same polls you look at, you take a look at the polls, they're saying whether I pull together NATO and the European Union as well as Asian partners, I think we have. But there's more to do. And with regard to age, I can't even say, I guess how old I am, I can't even say the number. It doesn't register with me. And but the only thing I can say is that one of the things that people are going to find out is they're going to see a race and they're going to judge whether or not I have it or don't have it. I respect them taking a hard look at it. I take a hard look at it as well. I took a hard look at it before I decided to run. And I feel good. I feel excited about the prospects. And I think we're on the verge of really turning the corner in a way we haven't in a long time. I know you're tired of hearing me say we're at an inflection point, but we really are. What happens in the next 2, 3, 4 years is going to determine what the next 3, 4 decades look like. And I have never been more optimistic in my life about the possibilities of the United States.
To be clear, though, you just said, I know him well. Did Donald Trump's decision to run affect yours? Would you be running if he wasn't?
Yeah, I think I still would be running if he wasn't. I do know him well. He's not hard to know, as you know. You know him well, too. The question is whether or not, look, there's more to finish the job. We have an opportunity to put ourselves in a position where we are economically and politically secure for a long time. Look, we continue to have, and now you don't like me hear me saying it, there's still a contest between autocracies and democracies. And we're the leading democracy in the world. And it's something I know a fair amount about, something I care about, and something that I have found a willingness of an awful lot of our allies and friends to follow. So I think that you know, we have to finish the job, nail it down.
Did the recent leaks revealing that the U.S. was spying on South Korea come up at all in your discussions? And did President Biden provide you any assurances?
네, 지금 뭐 한미 간에 그 부분에 대해서는 소통하고 또 필요한 정보를 공유해 나가고 있습니다. 지금 뭐 미국에서도 조사가 진행 중이기 때문에 또 이 국가 간의 이 관계에서 이런 다양하고 이런 복잡한 변수가 있는 문제에 대해서 좀 시간을 두고 미국의 조사 결과를 지켜보고 충분히 소통할 생각입니다.
네. 질문 주셔서 감사합니다. 파이내셜 뉴스의 김학재 기자라고 합니다. 먼저 두 분 대통령께 질문드릴 텐데요. 윤석열 대통령께 먼저 말씀드리겠습니다. 대통령께서 이번 미국 국빈 방문으로 한미 동맹이 첨단 기술 동맹으로 좀 강화는 됐는데 이 과정에서 이제 미국과의 공급망 구축, 첨단 과학기술 협력, 첨단 기업 투자 유치로 성과도 거두셨습니다. 근데 이런 성과가 기업들에게 긍정적인 영향을 좀 주겠지만 국민들 개개인에게 어떤 좀 영향을 줄지 단기적으로 또 장기적으로 어떤 영향을 줄지 좀 말씀 좀 부탁드리겠습니다. 바이든 대통령께도 좀 질문드리겠습니다. 한미동맹 70주년을 기념할 정도로 지금 분위기는 좋지만 아직 그 기자회견문이 있어도 아직 한국 기업들이 미국의 반도체법과 인플레이션 감축법 때문에 많이 불안해하고 있습니다. 미국에 투자한 우리 한국 기업들이 불안해하지 않도록 바이든 대통령께서 어떤 메시지로 좀 안심을 시켜주실 수 있으실지 말씀 좀 부탁드리겠습니다.
지금 한미 간의 기술 협력 또 첨단 산업의 이런 협력 강화는 먼저 우리 기업의 경쟁력을 키울 것입니다. 그리고 국제 분업 체계에서 높은 생산성과 부가가치를 창출하는 그런 상품들을 만들어낼 것이고 우리 국민들께서는 그러한 과정에서 전후방 효과로 나오는 다양한 넓은 이런 산업 생태계 구축에 또 많은 투자와 일자리의 기회를 가질 것입니다. 그리고 무엇보다 미래 세대에게 어떤 도전과 혁신 의지를 불러일으켜서 우리 경제와 산업이 앞으로 더 번영하고 풍요해질 것이라고 저희는 믿고 있습니다.
The reassurance is that it's overwhelmingly in our interest for Korea to do well. No, it is. It's very much in America's interest that Korea do well in the Pacific, very well, because they are one of our most valued partners. And so I think the combination of growing democracies and the democratic institutions as well as their economies is overwhelming in the benefit of the United States, whether it is in South Korea or it's in Australia, in the deep South Pacific. And so I think that there's a reason, overwhelming reason. Plus, in addition to that, we're increasing the number of student exchanges, access to more information between our folks, educating our people, as well as we're going to be cooperating in everything from space to technology to medicine. And so there's so many opportunities we have. And I don't think at least we don't, and I don't think so far, most of the South Korean companies believe that there's somehow a U.S. effort to slow them down, prevent their growth, or anything like that. We'd like to see them grow. And I mean that sincerely. It's overwhelming in the U.S. interest for South Korea to do very well economically. It's overwhelming in our interest because it has. And then lastly, I think we underestimate the example that South Korea sets. Here you have a nation that is significant, but is not a nation of 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 people making the kind of changes it's making. It gives other smaller nations hope to believe that if they have democratic institutions and commitment and impact on industries that in fact are the cutting edge industries, new sciences and technology, including AI and other things, that there's a future for them. And I think that's what this is about. And so we view South Korea's economic growth as a benefit to the United States as well as freedom around the world. Thank you all so very much. Appreciate it.